If anyone does not love the Lord, Jesus Christ, let him be accused, O Lord, come, amen.
Luminous Arc is Image Epic's debut tactical RPG directed by Ryohei Mikage. Image Epic is a company where everyone knows its end, but few talk about its beginning. This is going to be a long story, one that'll take over 25 games to explain. So it's time to return to Image Epic's earlier days, back to a time when they were just a small company and when they weren't just trying to cash in on waifus and big tits. Okay, back to a time when they were just a small company. Image Epic was founded on August 13th, 2004. In an interview with GameSet Watch, Mikage started up Image Epic during his 4th year in college. By then, he was working part-time at Sega, and at that time, he was also working for Namco with Tales of Symphonia. Image Epic was founded with only 1 yen, thanks to a program by then Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi. Normally, you'd need 100,000 yen. With some game development knowledge, and with a little money saved, Mikage would then begin Luminous Arc. Nintendo Power released a lot of information before Luminous Arc's release. The May 2007 issue gave us a first look at the game, and name-dropped its sound designer, Yasunori Mitsuda. The September 2007 issue featured a 3-page-long interview with the creators of Luminous Arc, producer Hideyuki Mizutani, character designer Kaito Shibano, sound producer Yasunori Mitsuda, and director Yorei Mikage. Luminous Arc began when Mikage shared his ideas with Mizutani, and they both had the idea of making a strategy RPG with the same direction. And according to GameSet Watch, Mikage went to Marvelous Interactive because Marvelous had an existing relationship with Nintendo, so a partnership would make it easier to get Image Epic games on Nintendo consoles. In the Nintendo Power article, one answer sticks out. If that doesn't scream, we're going to milk these teats dry, I don't know what does. Luminous Arc was released in North America on August 14th, 2007. The other tactical RPG competing against Luminous Arc was Hoshigami Remix, which came out in June 2007. Hoshigami was a port of a PS1 game released in 2001, but was criticized for showing its age on a new handheld. In Japan, Luminous Arc was released on February 8th, 2007, 1 month before Super Robot Wars W. This is only if we're comparing tactical RPGs on the DS. In America, this game was released 2 months before... Now that we have some backstory for Luminous Arc, let's get into the game. Luminous Arc tells you exactly what you're getting into the moment you start the game. The opening movie was done by a support studio, but they got one of the best support studios to make their anime opening. The theme song was Kaori Oda's debut single. By then, she had already been a part of Fiction Junction and Sound Horizon. Sound Horizon, in particular, would go on to do this. There were 4 composers for Luminous Arc: Yasunori Mitsuda, Kazumi Mitome, Akari Kaida, and Shota Kageyama. This is Kageyama's first credited work as a musician. He would go on to compose for these games. Keep this in mind for future reviews. Image Epic goes for name recognition first, game mechanics second. It'll come back when we talk about other games much later in the series. For now, let's review the game. Gameplay in Luminous Arc is easy to pick up. For story battles, we'll listen to a voiced cutscene and then prepare for a fight. We'll get the option to talk to party members, purchase equipment, or brush up on some lore before entering the fight. The bottom screen of the DS is where all the action happens. The top screen displays the character's stats. The stats are what you expect, like physical and magical attack, evasion, accuracy, and movement. In Luminous Arc, turn order is dictated by your move stat, so a higher move character will get their turn first. You can use either stylus input or button input, but you can't choose both. I found it easier to play via button input. It's worth noting that some games journalists factored in shitty touch controls as to why you shouldn't play this game. He forgot this game has an options menu.
The Nintendo DS touchscreen interface can test your patience.
You can even change it in the middle of a fight with the select button. After a battle, you're sent to the world map. The game always reminds you where to go next to advance the story. If you cross these tiles for the first time, you're forced into a random battle. But sometimes the game forgets to trigger that. This happens when you move from map screen to map screen. At this point in the game, I have to fight a random battle. I'm on the random battle tile, but I can freely move to the next save tile and skip the random battle entirely. Enemies in random battles don't scale to your character's levels, which can make backtracking boring. Backtracking can be a little weird. Sometimes you're forced into a random battle, and sometimes you have the option to enter or ignore the battle. You can even initiate a random battle by standing on the tile and pressing the A button. I really would have liked the option to appear at all times, because this was a problem I had in Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics.
Fight it out.
This game doesn't need a lot of level grinding, and you can comfortably beat the game within 15 hours. You level up very quickly, so get used to hearing this. Leveling up also completely heals a character's HP and MP, so you can pull some really risky strategies with some planning. Using support skills on an ally always gives you 30 experience. This means that dedicated support characters can level up once every 4 actions. It's nice that the game was aware of its own level curve and rewarded healers accordingly. You get access to the flash gauge early on. Build up enough and you can use a flash drive. Flash drives deal a lot of damage and inflict a status ailment, but some other flash drives can heal. You have 5 equipment slots for every character. 1 slot for their weapon, 2 slots for their armor, and 2 slots for accessories. Upgrades are expensive, so you can't always purchase a new set of gear once it's available. You'll get access to crafting halfway through the game. You can make endgame equipment the moment you unlock crafting, if you get the cryptic hints. Luminous Arc has multiplayer, which is also unlocked at midgame. It was probably thrown in to get this on the box. The draw of the series are intermissions. Intermissions are a simplified dating sim, where you can talk to a party member at the end of every battle, and then choose from one of 3 responses. Intermissions are more involved than Fire Emblem supports or Summon Knight's talk mechanic. It encourages you to pay attention when you're trying to romance the characters, and it helps that it gives you some nice artwork and some really powerful items as a reward. You only have 10 chances to talk to a character per playthrough, and that includes the times you mess up. Yeah, good luck with the tsundere, dude. This ties in with Mikage's Nintendo Power interview, where the plan was to get players interested in the characters in the world rather than the mechanics. Let's look at our starting team. Alph is the main character, so he'll always be in the party during story battles. Alph is a tank, so while he can't use magic, he can use a rifle to attack from range. He's our self-insert, so he's pretty naive. Theo is an archer. He's our kid brother, and he's mostly along for the ride. Leon fights at close range. He's also the strongest character in the game and can easily reach the damage cap by endgame. He's not very bright, but he makes up for it in passion. Heath is a magic knight and all of his stats are well balanced. He can use lightning magic to attack enemies, and his spear gives him extra range with physical attacks. He's our cool older mentor, and he's there to help us in the early game. If you're thinking, I've seen this before, then you're exactly right. Luminous Arc uses cliches to set up, but once the plot twist happens, that's where the character development begins. Much like the games Mikage used to bug test for. With intermissions, this gives you plenty of opportunity to develop an otherwise cliché character. At this point, it's hard to talk about other recruitable characters without spoiling the story. So if you don't mind getting spoiled, let's get started. The game starts off with a prophecy of a hero coming to save the world. These choices affect what crafting items you get when you unlock crafting, but you can easily forget about this. So it's not a personality test. Back to Alph and his fellow child soldiers. It turns out that witches have returned to destroy the world, and it's up to a bunch of teenagers to save the world from the Antichrist. We then hire the housemaid Lucia. Lucia's a witch and a bitch.
I don't do dishes.
What did you say?
It'll dry out my hands, so I don't like doing it.
What kind of a maid are you?
I choose my own job as a maid.
Alph is also her rim, but she doesn't explain what a rim is because, fuck you, you're Catholic, you don't deserve exposition. Lucia saves Alph from a monster attack, so to pay her back, we can't expose her as a witch. Lucia makes for a pretty decent healer, and this is where the game starts to throw up red flags. Since we're on a crusade against witches, Lucia cannot join us in battle. That's okay because Lucia is immediately replaced by Cecile, and Cecile's magic is approved by the Vatican. And now we have to collect all the Lapiciae before the witches do. They're kind of like Chaos Emeralds, so we have to collect all the PCA before the witches do and blow up the world. We meet Kingston, who definitely is not representative of a Catholic bishop, and this guy.
You'll never get past these manly biceps.
Gomad and Archbishop Asshole over here do a really bad job of making Catholicism palatable. Lucia, in a moment of genius, goes ballistic and blows her cover, storms out, everybody claps, and the only reason why I still remember this game shows up.
Witch of Immolation!
Witch of Immolation?
Lucia tries to... well, she doesn't tell us anything. I mean, let's face it. If you know Corinthians 14:10, then you should be able to figure out what's going on between Lucia and this I know wannabe titty monster on your own. Lucia then teleports away with the help of a magic mushroom.
Focus Cadabra!
We then get a mission to exterminate all witches, and then Heath challenges us to a one-on-one fight. I'll be honest, it was nice seeing a one-on-one fight this early in the game. It's almost like foreshadowing. We split up from Heath, and then we meet up with Saki and Nikolai. Saki has the highest move stat in the game, which gives her plenty of turns in battle. Nikolai can attack from range and cast buffing spells on our party. Nikolai and Saki aren't really important, but you know who is important? My favorite titty monster. Sadly, our brother steals all of Vanessa's passion from us. Not surprising, really. Thanks to Vanessa, our brother begins to develop a kobold male on human female fetish.
No! Don't look!
Seeing that Theo is being transformed into a dragon dildo, Lucia decides to help Theo out. So we have to play hide and seek with Princess Jasmine on the way to the witch's forest.
I will kill you all with my huge muscles! Even the witches!
The strong arm alchemist and high priest Colonello show up. Being the Luddites we are, we team up with the witches and get Mel on our party. Mel replaces Cecile as a healer because Mel gets earlier access to her spells. Mel appeals to that one fetish where the little girl is really hundreds of years old and talks like an old person. We enter the witch's forest and fight Mavi and Vivi as a test of strength. They join our party afterwards. Vivi is the fastest witch in the game. She uses a gun as a weapon and she can cast wind magic. She's the laziest witch in the story and is kind of along for the ride. Mavi talks about getting gains a lot, so she's pretty cool. She's useful as a backup tank. It turns out both Alf and Theo have dragon's blood. That's right, you've been bad dragons the entire time. Vanessa was trying to fulfill 2 of her fetishes in one go, but she ended up fulfilling 5. We need to go to a volcano while Lucia and Alf pretend to have a lover's quarrel. We get advice from a sea lion, get called racist, and surprise! Theo being a dragon never comes up again. Don't think about it. Hey, we got Waka's persona on our team.
Eh? This boy's turning into a dragon, yeah? Please, let me see.
Polone Polone has no accuracy. He's useless. Hey, he's a fun guy though. We finally get to know what a rim is. When a scaly male really loves a human female, their hearts become one.
So, let me get this straight. First off, I'm not human. I'm a dragon. Or a dragon man, or something.
Yes.
And you and I, we're a witch and a dragon, right?
Yes?
So, what's the part about putting our hearts together mean?
Well, you have to think about me, and I have to think about you.
We need a rim to kill God, or else God will vor the planet. Yeah, that's right, God is evil in a JRPG! Fuck religion and fuck God! Okay, look, I'm gonna be out of character for a second. It's a pretty common Western thing to bash on Japan's dislike of organized religion. But this is something that you really need to think with respect to the Japanese. This one cult was responsible for the 1995 sarin attacks, and this wasn't the first of their attacks. It does not help that the former leader declared himself Jesus Christ. So, when you describe an organized religion to a Japanese person, they're not going to think about the quiet old guy managing the neighborhood shrine, they're going to think about a murder cult with biological weapons. So please keep this in mind when I poke fun at the game's dislike of religion. Okay? Please? Okay, let's just move on. Hey, it works. Don't fix what ain't broke. Vanessa decides to bomb a research facility. It turns out that Cardinal Bishop Cumbrain made a golem from a Lepiciae. Heath challenges us to a one-on-one duel, loses, recognizes the Steel Witch and forces her emotional chip to overload, a samurai rescues us, Mel makes a sick Buckaroo Banzai reference, Lucia and Alf get into a fight and Lucia gets so mad she forgets we're being chilled by a 5-star Arknights character and leaves our party for the 3rd time. Oh yeah, and Leon realizes that this citizen killed his dad and also leaves our group. Not only are we down Lucia again, but we have a pretty mediocre replacement for Leon. By the time we catch up to Lucia, she is cornered by Iris. Claire also joins our party. She can also debuff enemies, but shoving lightning up an enemy's ass is also a form of debuffing. Claire cries a lot. Alf then realizes that the one person causing him all of his misery in his life is his soulmate.
What about me?
Of course, I'll protect you too.
Thank you, my Rim.
Sure.
Alf, close your eyes.
Okay.
I can see you. What can you see, Alf?
I can see you with my eyes closed. Try smiling for once, Lucia.
Shut up! I'll smile when I feel like it. Let's work together.
Of course.
Alf goes from being a tank to being straight up broken. You also get access to synergies, which require both users to have a full flash gauge. Synergies are more trouble than they're worth, but they're flashy. Now with Lucia permanently in our party, we're paranoid that she'll leave again and we'll never bother using her. Here's your villain for the 3rd arc.
You're gonna break it later, right? Why not just kaboom it, like right now?
どうせ後で壊しちゃうんでしょ？だったら今壊しちゃおうよ。
I was born to see to Master God's rebirth. I want to see that happen, like as soon as possible.
っていうか、私は神様復活のために生まれてきたんだし、神様に早く会いたいし。
And I like totally don't like that rock!
っていうか、邪魔なんだもん。
Priel destroys the Mother Crystal, the crystal from all witches are born from. Cecile turns into the strongest witch in the game. I hope you kept her leveled up. We also run into Cosmos, who blows herself up. Now that Kevin Winnicott is single, he can join our party. Heath comes in at around the same level as our team, and he has way more options to support party members and deal damage. We also find Leon, and then we storm the Vatican. It turns out Vanessa was right. Violence is the only answer, so we team up. So let's just forget that she almost addicted our brother to scaly male on human female porn. She's on our side. Vanessa joins the party at the same power when she was a boss, so she's really useful. The actual leader of the church, some kid, fuses with God, bringing us to the final arc. We find out that the church has been doing all of this research into witches because they want to control God. Failure Friar gets a Lepiciae shoved up his ass by Metropolitan Moron, turning him into a mindless beast. Just like Catholic school intended. Prissy Priest gets a Lepiciae shoved up his ass by Archangel Michael, turning him into a mindless beast. Just like Catholic school intended. Lucia, the strongest yet most underleveled of the witches, will use her spear to kill God while we protect her.
Like you don't deserve anything. Do like insects get to vote? No. There's nothing in the universe that belongs to you. All you guys are little snackies for Master God when he gets the munchies. You're just gonna get eaten up by Master God, along with the planet.
And then E621 Jesus floors Mary Magdalene. Welcome to Endgame.
No, Master God! It can't be! Why? I love Master God so much! But you're still doing this to Priel? No! Don't eat pretty Priel! God! Don't eat me! No!
Of course, at the last minute, Lucia wants to disregard this plan because, fuck you, we need to reinforce that Alf and Lucia are in love. So we kill God, save our soon-rare girlfriend, and beat the game. 1 year later, Lucia survived. Alf kept it a secret for a year. Don't think about it. Wait a minute, I forgot something. At the end of every chapter since chapter 3, we get a brief skit from Copen, one of Vanessa's henchmen. Remember when Theo was transforming into a pack of teeny weenies? Copen made a... Okay, too real, dude. Remember when Iris blew up? Copen went on vacation. Remember when God divorced his girlfriend? Copen watched the sunset. Copen is absolutely integral to the plot, because the game wouldn't end every fucking chapter with Copen's blog if it weren't important. Once you complete the game, you now have the option to play in New Game Plus. All of your levels carry over, and you can replay intermissions. In New Game Plus, you can use all of your characters in random battles, but in story battles, you're locked with the characters you'd normally have at the time. So no Vanessa versus Vanessa paradoxes. Priestess Cecile won't be available in New Game Plus, as she's always in her Twilight Witch form. So you cannot do intermissions with Priestess Cecile. When starting New Game Plus, you get access to a bonus dungeon. It's a gauntlet of 50 fights. The bonus dungeon is difficult, even with max level characters. There is a reward, but it's for bragging rights. There are side quests, but finding them are rather cryptic. You need to be within a certain range of chapters, backtrack to a specific town, and then go to another area to fight that extra battle. I only found out about them on the cutscene gallery when my otherwise complete save file had missing cutscenes. It doesn't help that you don't have any reason to backtrack, since random battles in older areas don't scale to your current level. You're also locked out of a side quest if you don't complete it in time. Overall, Luminous Arc is a predictable story. At worst, it's safe. And considering that Luminous Arc is Image Epic's first game, a safe game won't turn heads, but it'll get you sales. Even on gameplay, Luminous Arc is nothing special. So instead, Luminous Arc's story tried to focus more on the characters. Final Fantasy Tactics has named characters show up front and center for their arc, but they mostly disappear once they're no longer relevant. Because I can do this. Even if some of the characters in Luminous Arc weren't that good in game, it was nice that Luminous Arc tried to give them a personality through intermissions, even if it was something predictable. The cast of Luminous Arc follow familiar archetypes. You have the naive main character, the energetic younger brother, the quiet girl that has a crush on the main character, the tsundere, it was a different time back then, and it was a different time back then. It's a quantity over quality thing, and it's odd that Luminous Arc goes for quality using cliché characters. Luminous Arc may have been trying to do a Tales of style twist with these familiar characters, but in the end they didn't really go all the way, and the characters just ended up being cliché characters. Now that we have the general gameplay and story taken care of, let's take a look at the characters with respect to playability. The game only gives you 15 party members. You're forced to find the best strategy with what limited units the game gives you. Leon leaves the party right at the point when you realize he can one-shot most enemies. It's a very heavy-handed attempt at difficulty by removing a powerful character. Lucia in particular drops in and out of the party frequently, but she's only permanently in your party starting on chapter 17 of 25. If you're like me, you were paranoid that Lucia was going to be unplayable during the final boss fight. Maybe there's something deep about how the main love interest forces you to go out of your way to spend time with her, but considering that this game thought God being evil in a JRPG was original, I doubt this is a case. Sometimes I thought the music was out of place, especially during story battles. There was more focus on themes that play during dialogue, and those were more memorable.
I can't believe the church created such an abomination. You have to keep your eyes open to seek the truth, Missy. I can't even close my eyes to pray. If you have your eyes open, you can see what's happening in front of you. Well, I was praying for peace and happiness. And, never mind. I prayed that we could all stay together forever. I prayed that I could be with What?
Theo! Your arm!
The scales. Just like a dragon. No! Don't look!
Theo!
You can select up to 8 party members in a fight. You have no option to preview a fight or your formation, and your first turn is often wasted on repositioning your team. Other games in the genre don't have this issue. In some chapters, we have to fight a battle back to back. You do not have the chance to change equipment or even save. Final Fantasy Tactics gave you the option to do both. To make boss fights harder, the game gives bosses full flash gauges. They often use their strongest attack during their first turn. Playing this game on New Game Plus doesn't change enemy levels either. The only exception to this are recruitable bosses like Vanessa or Vivi. There are a lot of extra mechanics. A complex elemental weakness system, terrain effects, how relationship values actually influence a character's stats in battle, but you can completely ignore all of them. Mostly because of physical attackers like Leon and Elf. Despite having an emphasis on story, there was no alternate ending. In my playthrough, I reached max affection with Vanessa and completely ignored Lucia. This had no impact on the ending. There were a handful of bugs I found during my playthrough. Sometimes the game gets confused with who's buffed and who's debuffed. Because I like to buff my party members, I saw this bug pretty often. Sometimes characters with a status ailment kneel, and sometimes they don't. There was a reported bug of equipment not appearing on the crafting menu, but I wasn't able to replicate it. The artificially difficult bosses, the numerous bugs, and the lack of alternate endings despite having an emphasis on story makes this difficult to recommend on gameplay alone. There are games in the genre with better unit customization, and there are games that do a much better job of making difficult fights fair. There are also games in the genre that do exactly what Luminous Arc is trying to do and just does it better, especially within this time frame. But hey, you can talk to your waifu more often in this game! When it comes to the intermissions, not all of the characters get artwork, but all of the characters get voiced lines.
Let's see, who can eat more of these cookies?
It's weird that they didn't go the extra mile for a nice picture. For example, if you pursue Claire, you realize that Nikolai is donating self-insert dojin into the witch's library, and that's not a goddamn metaphor. There's no artwork of that scene, and the best you get is Claire's dialogue sprite. Vanessa, on the other hand, has artwork. Pursuing Vanessa will remind underage players not to drink, but also points out that Alf can stop being Lucia's rim at any time. Also boobs. In fact, 1/3 of the game focused on Theo being part dragon, and how he has the capacity to be another witch's rim. The game sidesteps this plot point because, don't think about it, you gotta fight God in a JRPG. Keep in mind that this game is the first in a trilogy. This looks like broad world building, so that way the other games can spend more time with details. For the most part, the localization is faithful to the original, barring some memes, but that's an Atlus thing. There were a few minor problems with the localization, and it's in the spells. This is Mel's spell list in Japanese. Heal and Hail are adjacent spells in the American version, as opposed to Cura and Splash in the Japanese. Having two similar words looking next to one another can cause players to cast the wrong spell. In defense of the localization are Alf's skills. The American localization makes the skills easier to read, as they're changed to Rifle for the weak single target attack, Shotgun for the long range area of effect attack, and Flechette for the short range high damage area of effect attack. There is one major localization mistake. In Twilight Witch Cecile's intermission, two of her choices on her third intermission have been swapped. In both the Japanese and English version, you need to select the third choice. But this results in an unintuitive choice in the English version. You need to friendzone Cecile rather than be supportive to her. This makes the correct choice in the next intermission seem a little more mean-spirited because the right choice is to tease Cecile that you're in love with her. The voice acting in this game was well done. Some voices are hit or miss, like Nikolai and Palone Palone.
Ah, my lovely Sky Witch! Please spin me into a tornado of love!
Oh, get away from me.
Yay! I'm flying high on my witch's love! Oh, this is a Nogilla Magilla rune, yeah? This must be Vanessa's rune. It has both guts and heaven.
But when you consider their Japanese performances, that's a different story.
浮雲の魔女様、僕を愛の嵐に巻き込んでください。
あっち行って。
僕は魔女様の愛で空を飛んでいる。
ああ、これはノギラメギラのルーンだぞ。
しかも厄介なことに、州と質もかかってるぞ。
Atlus only credited the talent studio, but if you know your voice actors, a few of them stand out. This is the opposite in the Japanese version. The quality of the voice acting will come back to haunt us in future games, so keep that in mind. Overall, Luminous Arc did what it set out to do. Get people interested in the world it made, put Image Epic on the radar, and make an accessible, if sometimes simple, strategy game. On its release, Luminous Arc came out at a good time, because there was little competition for tactical RPGs on the DS. The voice actors' performances made the game into something memorable, especially for an early DS game. Luminous Arc is a game that's best enjoyed when you know the history and eventual future of Image Epic. It's a short, lighthearted game. One with plenty of flaws, and one that doesn't take many risks. It's the JRPG equivalent of your first interview. You've got everything to prove, but the best thing you can do is make a good first impression. And hope that people don't know that you're desperate for money. Tune in next time when we talk about an anime game.